she's staring at.
Trevor McFur in the Crescent Galaxy, released in 1993 for the Atari Jaguar courtesy of the Atari Corporation. Originally considered to be the pack-in title for the Jaguar, before the higher-ups opted for Cybermorph instead, and ended up being, for a time, the only other game you could get for the Atari Jaguar, allegedly. Trevor McFur is a horizontal scrolling shooter where you fly McFur across multiple levels, spanning 5 distinct planetary bodies, and I'm sure there's a story of some sort for you to get invested in, but like most shmups, it all boils down to blow up everything you see on screen without getting blown up yourself. And what other motivation do you really need in a shmup than that? I mean, come on. Upon starting the game, you're greeted with a rather sophisticated display featuring 5 planets on the top left and some information on the bottom. This is your stage select screen in which you pick one of 4 planets in the corner, get some tidbits on the various hazards and environments you'll encounter, and start the game from there. Once the 4 corner planets are cleared, you can access the 5th and final planet where the evil audit awaits, and, well, it's a horizontal scrolling shooter similar to every horizontal scrolling shooter you've seen released around this time. You shoot a bunch of gimmicks, you picked up dropped gimmicks to power up your ship with additional firepower and such, you fight a boss or 2 along the way. There's nothing here that hasn't been done elsewhere before. And also, after liberating a planet, you get to play a bonus stage where you fly through rings. Because of course you do. And that's pretty much Trevor McFur in the Crescent Galaxy in the proverbial nutshell, so to speak. It's a fairly rudimentary horizontal shmup designed exclusively for the Atari Jaguar, and there's a reason why it took decades to see a re-release. There's not a whole lot to it. You fly in space, a bunch of random crap, and I do mean random toss shit to a wall sort of stuff. Fly your way, you blow it up, you face a boss, you blow that up, then you invade the planet, which has its own levels and bosses, and the cycle continues. You've got some power-ups, the usual lasers and multi-shots, a defensive shield, and you even have a wingman to summon to help you out a bit, which is somewhat unique at least. And look, credit where it's due, functionally speaking, Trevor McFur isn't necessarily a bad shooter, it controls adequately enough. You have power-ups to build up your ship's speed and power, the action never really chugs, it's a perfectly functional horizontal shmup, but you can get a perfectly functional horizontal shmup just about anywhere. It's the 90s, take your pick. Genesis, TurboGrafx, Super Nintendo, PC, arcade, zoos, landfills, toilets. Anywhere you look, there's a shmup being laid there. They were fairly common in those days. And you didn't need Atari's rugged cat to play a great shmup, because that's not what you're getting with Trevor McFur in the Crescent Galaxy. Trevor McFur uses pre-rendered CG graphics for its visuals, which no doubt caught some eyeballs back in 1993, and is somewhat distinct from all those other shooters that were still using pixels and sprite work. But this is one of those cases where a game looks better in still shots than in motion, because the game doesn't impress visually. The animation is either janky or non-existent, the CG characters are fairly crudely put together in a sort of primitive charm that you'll either find endearing or not at all, and the overall appearance... Well look, I've seen worse done with CG stuff around this time, and even back then I didn't really think this looked good on paper either, but I don't know, there's an odd endearment to this sort of thing that makes me kind of appreciate this sort of visual style, I guess. I don't know where I was going with that, but that's really all there is to it. On the flip side, however, the sound is fucking atrocious. For a good majority of the game, there's no music, which makes the action seem less exciting, but considering the quality of the few music tracks featured in this game, silence is probably the best soundtrack of all. Unfortunately, the lack of music also highlights the quality of the sound effects, which are also pretty bad. Some are generic sounding, others are less inspired. And then there's the sound that plays when you pick up an item. It sounds like someone going, "What?" I mean, people get annoyed by the green bald lady questioning their mediocre flying skills in Cybermorph, but you know what? I'll take that over this shit any day of the week, because at the very least, she sounds somewhat coherent. Overall, Trevor McFur in the Crescent Galaxy is a big pre-rendered computer-generated furball of meh. It is as functional of a horizontal scrolling shooter as you're going to get on the Jaguar, which is fine by first generation Jaguar standards, and that's really all there is to it. It's on the Atari 50 compilation if you want to try it out, but personally, I'll just stick with Scramble on the Vectrex. I think that's a much more satisfying game than Trevor McFur, who isn't even good enough to make the roster of Atari carts. Now how's that for a tease?